Welcome to another edition of Inside Guyana. Today, ITV camera crew, led by Jadoopat, yours truly, Dr. Rudy Jadoopat, are inside the office of Dr. Frank Anthony, medical doctor, former Minister of Culture, Youth and Sports, and is the current Member of Parliament representing the opposition, and he's the Shadow Minister for Health. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Frank Anthony to our program Inside Guyana. Sir, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much for having me in your program.
Doctor, you're no stranger to our ITV viewers, in the diaspora especially, and therefore we're not going to go back into your background, where you're from, that we normally would ask our new guests.
Right.
And we're very grateful for you, for the opportunity you've provided us to come and have an interview with you. At first call, I wanted viewers to know Dr. Frank Anthony immediately agreed, and here we are. So, Doctor, are you happy with the current government? Are they better than the previous one? I know you will say no, but the viewers would like you to be more specific.
Yeah. Well, I think we've had a couple months of this government, and already we are seeing a number of mistakes. If you use their manifesto as a benchmark of what they promised that they would deliver within 100 days, many of those promises were not met. And I think...
for example?
Well, for example, when they were out on the campaign trail, they went and spoke to the farmers on rice, and they promised rice farmers $9,000 back for paddy. That's quite a lot of dollars for a bag of paddy. We were more responsible in saying that we can offer maybe $3,000 a bag. But people, of course, got carried away by the numbers. And
so you're saying it was a campaign ploy?
It was a campaign ploy, and now that they're in government, farmers are now getting about $2,000 a bag for paddy. And strangely, there's a crisis in the rice sector because last year the people produced perhaps the highest amount of tons of rice, close to 640 something thousand tons. Yet their income was far lower than previous years. And that is because selling the rice exporting the rice to various countries, they're not getting the right price. And because of that, you have the repercussions in the industry. So rice is going through a crisis, and we thought that it was important to bring that to the Parliament and to have a debate about the sector and perhaps fashion some solutions about what can be done for the sector and how we can help the rice farmers. Unfortunately, when the opposition put forward a motion for debate in the Parliament, the motion was disallowed. And it was disallowed on the basis that rice is not government's business. Now that's a strange notion. How rice is not the government's business when you know that this is one of our major export earners. The industry is employing so many people. It's a strange position to take. So before the elections of May last year, they were out there campaigning and telling farmers what they'll do and all these nice promises. And now they're not supporting the farmers, they're not helping the farmers. So the industry now is on a downward slide. In fact, a lot of people for this crop, they're not going back to the fields. And so this year we'll probably see a very disappointing amount of acreage being planted, and coupled with the dry conditions that we're experiencing, a lot of farmers cannot get water into their fields. And yet this government is not doing anything to help, like perhaps giving them a subsidy on the fuel so that they can pump water into the fields.
I saw they had two or a couple pumps installed in some areas for that purpose.
But that's the farmers themselves doing it, and it's costing them quite a lot of money to pump the water. So one of the alleviating measures, perhaps you can give them a subsidy on the fuel, so that they can use that fuel to pump and be able to plant enough rice for this crop. But no help is being given to the farmers.
But then what
Absolutely
use would it serve if you plant the rice and you don't have market for it? I understand there's a problem in getting market for Guyana's rice.
And that is a problem, but we were told a couple months back that the Prime Minister went to Mexico,
Yes,
and that he was getting the Mexican market. Unfortunately, we haven't seen that materialize as yet, because a lot of farmers are still complaining. Under the PPP, we were exporting to about 30-something countries. Right now, I'm not sure how many countries we are exporting to and what price we are getting. And this calls for negotiation, this calls for government intervention, this calls for the government going out there and be active in getting markets and helping farmers. I know there are exporters who export to Europe, and they're saying that they're having a hard time getting meetings with the responsible government officials so that they can keep their market in Europe viable. Now, it's a competitive world. Right? If we are not able to supply and get into the European market and keep those markets, then they're going to go elsewhere. And my understanding is that for that particular market where we were selling our rice, the people are exploring opportunities like in Egypt and other places, and they probably might get rice cheaper. So, if we are not out there marketing ourselves and doing things, then, the whole industry is going to collapse. And unfortunately, we are seeing the signs of decay in the industry, and we are totally flabbergasted by the attitude of the government, totally. Because this is one of the pillars of your economy, and yet you're not doing anything to help the people who are farming and who are into rice. So unfortunately, the rhetoric that we heard before May 11th is not matching with the reality now. And when you look at various sectors, you can see that repeating itself. Sugar is another example.
Yeah, yesterday I went to Wales sugar estate in the west bank of the Marara, and I spoke with some of the sugar workers, and they're very dissatisfied, disappointed that the government is closing down Wales estate, or plan to close Wales estate, and they said 1,700 people will be out of employment and they don't know what they're going to do, and stuff like that. But what this government is saying is that the deterioration of the Wales estate was allowed to prevail by the PPP administration. Your administration caused that.
Well, the thing is that sugar was experiencing a bad patch. For a couple of years now, the sugar industry was going through a rough period. But sugar is a very important commodity to Guyana. Most of us who came to Guyana came here because of sugar. Our ancestors came here because of sugar. Whether it's as slaves or indentured immigrants, we all came here with sugar. So the history of sugar in this country is a very long and sometimes very difficult one. And throughout that period of history, you would have had ups and downs in the sugar industry. That does not mean you give up on the industry. When you have challenges in the industry, what you have to do is to help the industry through that bad patch. And that was what we were doing. There were times when other sectors in Guyana was having difficulty, and sugar was the mainstay of the economy then. For example, when bauxite was going through difficulty, sugar was used to buttress these other sectors. Now that sugar is experiencing difficulty, you don't have to close the factories. You have to work and perhaps provide better management and see how you can make it more efficient and cost effective.
But
closing is not going to solve that problem.
Yeah, but under the PPP administration, Diamond Estate and LVI estates were closed.
But that was done in collaboration with the workers and that took a lengthy period of time. So there was a transitioning period, and the management, the government went out, they met with the workers, they engaged them, they explained to them why, what is it that they need to do, how they're going to be doing it. They asked for suggestions, workers came back with suggestions, and then they used all of these recommendations to then come up with a plan of how you transition these estates. So it's not an arbitrarily abrupt kind of closure. The workers themselves were involved, and then everybody that eventually they had options. If they're going to be terminated, then they had so many weeks of pay to help them to transition. Some of them were retrained to get other jobs, and other persons who opted to go to the other estates to work were given that right to go to the other estates. So a very comprehensive plan was done, and people were satisfied. You didn't see people protesting because people were satisfied, and it took us a couple of years of engagement to be able to do that. So it's not an abrupt closure, and people participated in this process. In this case, the government, one of the early things that they did was to establish what is called a commission of inquiry. And the president really liked these commission of inquiry because there were several that was established. So he established one, and a renowned economist, Clive Thomas, was put in charge. Now, they have produced a report. I've read that report. Nowhere in that report the recommendations are saying to close any of the estates. There's no recommendation in the report talking about closure of the estates.
So
here
how
it
did
is.
this idea come up to close this?
I don't know. Here it is. You have a commission established by the government to look into the sugar industry, come up with solutions of how to resolve the challenges that they're confronted. And they have totally ignored the contents of the report. And my understanding, they have spent close to 60 million or more on paying the commissioners to go around and do this inquiry and all of that. And here it is, you're ignoring everything. It's so bad that early in January, the management of Wales Estate, they did not know about any closure because they instructed the field workers to start plowing the fields to plant cane. 2 weeks after they started doing that, they were then instructed that the closure of Wales is imminent and they should cease all activity. So something is totally wrong, and then when you talk to the management of Gaisupu, they have one position. Talk to the factory, they got a different position, the actual factory. You talk to the board of Gaisupu, they don't seem to be in the know. Do you talk to the Minister of Agriculture, he is in a different place, right? And then the president announced a totally different thing. So there seem to be some diversity of views and lack of coordination on what actually they're going to do with Wales. But the end result is that they're going to close the factory and close maybe the field operations. And as you rightly said, there are about 1,700 workers that would be out of a job. Now, it's not only those workers, because the people in Canal, they plant cane for Wales Estate. So you have about 744 cane farmers whose livelihood depend on this estate. So now, because they didn't study this thing, what are they telling the cane farmers? They're telling them, well, take your cane to Iflut, which is very far away, the cost of transport. You know, these elements of production, they're going to go up high. And it's not going to be economical. It's not going to be economical. So people are now going to go through that hardship. What about the field workers? What about the factory workers? They said that they're going to re-employ them at IFLA because there are vacancies there. Well, last week, 67 persons who got notice that they have been terminated from Wales Estate, their union, GAU, wrote to the Ministry of Agriculture and said to the minister, these are the names of the 67 people that you have fired from Wales. They all would like to work. You said you would be providing them with jobs at iFlood, and they're willing to go to iFlood to work. Can you provide them with these jobs so that they can be re-employed? Nothing, no answer. So again, what they're saying, the rhetoric is not matching with the reality, because they said they're going to re-employ people, nobody's going to be out of a job, but the reality is 67 people are at home. Right? Then if you look at the economics of the situation, these workers, if they have a family of 4, whatever they are earning, that passes on to their family, then that passes on to the village and the community economy. You're taking out a lot of money from that area, because the estate is the hub of economic activity in that area. You remove that, a lot of people are going to have a difficult time. And again, it's totally uncaring. It's totally uncaring. Right now you have, last year, the government came to the parliament and boasted how they had one of the highest production. And fine. But when the workers produce, one of the things that they expect is the API, the annual production incentive. Up to now, they cannot be paid this entitlement. They're entitled to that. They cannot be paid that. And Gaisuku is holding off, they're not paying. So what are you leaving the workers to do?
I think they were waiting for the budget to pass. As you know, the Gaisuku is in dire straits. And
But you don't need
have to access government.
But you don't need the budget to pass to pay the people their annual production incentive.
No, they don't have the money, so they probably.
They have the money. Well, the budget
government to give them some money.
The budget has been passed now.
Right. I mean,
so up to now, they haven't been paying them. They haven't paid a single worker their API.
Maybe they'll get it this afternoon.
Well, we're very hopeful. But the workers are going to strike.
Okay.
And they start striking at, I think, every week they're striking one day until they get paid.
That might be favorable for Gaisuku.
Well, let's see.
Less labor cost.
Well, I don't know if it's less labor cost, because when they strike, they should be paid too. Because it's the management who is not coming forward and giving the people their monies. Yes. So you see, sugar is in a crisis as well. And again, the measures that are being taken in the sugar industry, we are not sure that it's going to lead anywhere. The report to the COI was put in Parliament, but when are we going to debate it? When are we going to discuss it? And if the government has already started to ignore the recommendations of the report, then of what value would a discussion in Parliament be? You know? So they're doing one thing or saying one thing, and they're doing something totally opposite.
What about the health fee? Let's come closer to something that you were Minister of. The mortality, the infant mortality rate was high. I don't know if it's going down or going up now. The maternity death rate is also high. Suicide rate is also high.
Yeah.
I understand there's some shortage of drugs and so on in the medical facilities here. Is that so? What is your...
Well, there are a lot of problems in health.
Well, they always have problems. What our viewers, I think, want to know whether these problems are getting worse.
They're getting worse. That's what I'm saying. They're getting worse. Because, for example, Guyana, under the PPP, we were able to move vaccination of children, immunization of children, where we were giving out like 6 vaccines when we took over. We're now doing 16. The challenge, however, is that in the last year, when you look at the budget that was presented, there's an appendix. And one of the indicators there is the rate of immunization. And you see all the rates have dropped. 1 year. All the rates have dropped. And you're wondering why. And a simple reason is that over the last couple of months, in some cases they were unable to get vaccines. Elementary thing like vaccines. They're not able to properly procure it. And even when they procure it, to send it out to the different regions apparently is a problem. To store it is a problem. Now how within 1 year the whole system has deteriorated like that? It has to be bad management. Bad management. And when we raised some of these questions in the budget debate, the minister couldn't answer some of these things. In fact, he had admitted to some of the deficiencies that we were talking about. And it's all happening under his watch. And he seems powerless to do anything about it.
So can't you advise the minister, since you're also a member of parliament?
Well, you know, sometimes when we advise, they don't take our advice.
I don't think you.
So, for example, in terms of the current drug shortages, we told them, not in this budget, in the previous budget, that the way that they are allocating resources right now for the procurement of medicines, that you're going to end up in a problem. And how are they going about doing this? The 10 regions, they have now budgeted a sum of money and placed it in the regions. Then the ministry itself, they normally run some vertical programs like malaria and HIV, so they get money to pay for those drugs. And then the Georgetown Hospital gets a set of money to pay for the drugs at the Georgetown Hospital. But as I asked the minister, I said to him, can you tell me whether there's a pharmacist in Region 1? He evaded the answer because there's no pharmacist. Can you tell me whether there's a pharmacist in Region 9? Again, evasion, right? The point is that these regions do not have the expertise, they do not have the personnel who would be able to come up with a proper list of medication and recommendations why you need them, the quantities and things like that.
But tell me something, these regions had pharmacists before under the PPP government?
But the system was different because the procurement was centralized, and at the central level, what we had was the technical people there who understand what to procure, and they were able to procure it on a timely basis. So your system now, you put the money in the region, you now, the region would now have to purchase the medicines. They got to come up with their own list, purchase the medicine, and then get it into the region.
So in order to purchase, you need a pharmacist.
And you need a pharmacist, and you need all these different technical people.